Hello and welcome. I'm Lauren Fletcher, Vice President of Content at Bobit Business Media and WorkTrack. I'm excited to have you with us for a conversation that's all about what's ahead, how the commercial vehicle industry is shifting, and how we can help shape what's next. We're bringing back an incredible panel, Nicole Combs, Candy McCollum, and Dania Rich Spencer, because each of them brings unique expertise and a grounded, real-world perspective from different areas of our industry. Today, we're digging into some of the biggest forces driving change: rapid tech advancements, the shift in workforce expectations. There's a lot coming at fleets and commercial vehicle businesses, but that also means there's a lot of opportunity. Our goal is to spotlight what's working, what's coming, and how to stay resilient through it all. Whether you're running a fleet, selling vehicles, building technology, or helping vocational and small business operators just do their jobs better. We're going to be taking your questions at the end, so feel free to drop those in at any time. So let's go around and just really briefly have everyone introduce themselves. Nicole, let's start with you.
Hi, my name is Nicole with Mitsubishi HC Capital, Director of Sales.
Thank you. And Candy?
Candy McCollum with Convoy at WorkTrack Solutions.
And Dania?
Thanks, Lauren. I'm Dania Rich Spencer with Escalent. I'm a strategic advisor to our Fleet Advisory Hub, which is a dedicated group of commercial vehicle and fleet decision makers representing about 12,000 companies and over 1 million vehicles. As a data analytics and consumer insight company, we engage with these folks on a regular and frequent basis, usually a couple times a month, on a variety of topics, including emerging technologies. So I'm really excited to be here today and looking forward to sharing some insight with you.
Thank you. And as I said, I'm Lauren, and I'm going to be moderating the conversation for everybody today. We're going to jump right into it. I know everybody's time is valuable, and we have a lot to talk about. So we're going to get started with what's fueling the biggest changes right now. From our conversations, we really kind of focused on technology. We've moved from big hype around electrification to a more grounded focus on practical efficiency and operational tools. AI, telematics, and analytics are really reshaping how commercial businesses and fleets function. But it's easy to get lost in all of the noise that we're hearing. So we're going to dig in and see what's real, what's useful, and what's next. How is technology shaping the future of commercial vehicles and fleet work? Candy, I would love to start with you on this one.
Yeah, fun. Well, I think that we're seeing a lot of things happen, right? So you take the integrations of technologies like onboard cameras, AI, just vehicle connectivity, the platforms that's used to analyze that data is transforming just how they can schedule work, reduce downtime, cut their costs, even enhancing safety, right? All the way down in my world, I see that this could probably take those technologies and at some point even help how vehicles are spec'd, right? We have the GPS tracking, dynamic routing. We hear a lot of hype about where it can help with route planning and things like that. So I think that these accessibility to apps is only going to make them be more efficient, learn more about themselves, right? A live example, I was with my family on a trip recently and someone got a notification and it was, hey, a crew member had left an engine idling too long, right? And it was dry weather. And it was just an alert that everyone got on the crew. Hey, this could spark fires, right? Like letting the vehicle sit there and idle that long. And it just, knowing this was coming up, that was one of the things that was just ticking in my head, that these are the things that just help us be better.
Reminds me of that old saying, there's an app for that. And yes. I think, in our industry, there definitely is an app for that. Yes. That was a great example. Dania, what do you think about how technology is shaping the future of commercial vehicles?
Yeah, well, to piggyback on some of what Candy has said, I mean, when you think about it, technology has had a tremendous impact on the industry, and it will continue to impact the industry probably at a faster rate than ever before. It's certainly made the industry cleaner, when you think about improved and advanced engine technologies. Engines are running much, much cleaner than they have in the past. Alt fuels and electrification. So technology has made the industry cleaner. As Candy said, smarter, right? We've got technology that helps with predictive maintenance and smart trailers and real-time traffic and weather to help with route optimization. And it's certainly made the industry safer, protecting our assets and our drivers. When you think about the array of ADAS features and collision avoidance technologies, automatic emergency braking. So certainly safer, more efficient. Telematics and the improvements of telematics and connectivity for fleet management, vehicle tracking. So a tremendous influence on the industry. But for me, there's a couple that's still making it a little bit scary when you think about self-driving vehicles, self-driving semis. We hear so much about AI. So it's a future that we're all looking forward to, and it will continue to kind of make its mark.
That's an interesting point too on the balance of it, that it is definitely exciting and there's a lot of very, major pros on there, but there are some areas that really need to be thought about and looked at. I think, AI and self-driving are some great examples. Nicole, what would you have to add to how the technology is shaping the future?
Well, as we've heard from the other ladies, it's clear that technology is impacting every aspect of the commercial fleet industry. From how we communicate to how we collect data to how we operate fleet operations and efficiencies and improving safety. One example would be even like the monitoring of food temperatures and temp control in vehicles. It's crazy to think that there was a point in our lives where food that needed refrigerated was transported regularly to our grocery stores. And we had no way to track and monitor the temperature at which that food was transported. And I mean, this is happening now, and it's, in real time where we can control that and monitor to ensure that the food that we're feeding to our families is stored at a safe temperature. So it's pretty interesting how it's just across the board.
Yeah, we talk a lot about how, fleet and trucking and commercial transportation impacts so much of what we do and keeps things moving. But I think, it was really interesting to hear these two safety examples that went from, food safety and temperatures to wildfire prevention, all connected to technology and technology within a vehicle and within our analytical systems. We talked safety when it comes to making things cleaner, safer, smarter, more efficient. What innovations are really starting to help fleets and businesses and commercial vehicle businesses optimize their operations? Dania, I'd love to start with you on this one.
Well, I think the innovation comes from the data. So all of these technologies, the connectivity, the intersection when you think of telematics and AI and data analytics, kind of that overlap, that intersection, all these technologies are creating a lot of data. And we're starting to hear a term, I just heard it a couple of weeks ago, maybe you ladies have heard it, data to everything. So for the last decade or so, we've heard, vehicle to X or vehicle to everything, vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to grid. Now it's D to X. And the data is the innovation, the way that I'm looking through the lens. Again, I work for a data analytics company, but the data and how the data is operationalized that leads to optimization of your business, that's the true innovation. And with AI, and I know we'll talk more about this, Lauren, but with AI, it's going to accelerate the operation, that's a hard word to say, operating your business and using the data to enable that. It's going to be accelerated at rates that we have not historically seen. And it's, as they say, it's all about the data.
I love it. And I think, that was a great call out. And I want to give some credit to my colleague, Chris Brown, with Automotive Fleet. He was actually the one who wrote a blog recently calling out that phrase and that term. And it was a really, really great concept that I think got clearly a lot of traction. But I think you had probably one of the better quotables so far, which was innovation comes from the data. That was such a great concept that you said. I definitely wrote it down for digging into a little bit later. That was fantastic. Nicole, what innovations are you seeing that are really helping fleets and businesses optimize their operations?
I think that one of the biggest ones that I'm seeing is the emergence of companies that have the ability to connect the different platforms, because all of these technologies exist. You've got your telematics and your predictive maintenance technologies and stuff like that. And all of these separate companies exist, and all of these companies are subscribing to these services, but they're, a lot of them are running independently, and you could have a car dealership that has services X, Y, Z, but is it compatible with the platform that they're using? So I've seen a recent emergence of companies that can connect all of these services together and feed it into one platform, which I think is really neat. So, with telematics offering real-time data on the vehicle performance and driver behavior, route optimizations, predictive maintenance technologies that help minimize costs and reduce downtime. I think all of those are wonderful innovations that are helping fleets and businesses optimize operations right now.
Connectivity, kind of really coming back down to that concept. Awesome. Candy, what would you add to that?
No, I like the quote about data bringing innovation. I think that sometimes it's a lot of data, right? And people don't know where to start. But just capturing it, right, kind of takes you down a journey. So once some of the trends, like Nicole had mentioned, you do see that. And you also see emerging trend of people that can help explain that, right? The management, the consulting, and not just taking the data from a spreadsheet or a CSV file, but maybe being able to just find what the indicators are, right? Where they can dive in deep, or when they need to go out to a job site or to a field. I heard several wonderful stories when I was in Work Truck Week, and it was like, hey, for the last few years, we've been all about trying to get to this point of technology and being smarter and more efficient. So we have it all, but we're not really on paper being smarter. So now we need to understand what's happening and why we're not being smarter. So seeing different things, companies to come in and be able to offer their services to explain that and consult on it, and where maybe cycles change, right? Maybe it could be hybrid or short-term leases for some vehicles. Seasonal surges, moving one vehicle from one location to another, which were kind of some of the things that I was getting from Work Truck Week. I do think that the more that we move along, we're going to, more things will happen. And just from being with Work Truck Solutions and data being for us, I know many times that in conversations I'm in, things will come up, or we might hear feedback and we're like, oh, well, you know what? We have the data for that, right? So let's go dig in deeper. So sometimes you just don't dig in deeper until the market or feedback comes. And so I think if we have them both there, open feedback and communication and the data itself, then we will see true innovation in our space.
And again, that kind of comes right back around to that innovation is coming from the data itself. We've got so much of it. We've been getting more and more over the years with all of the growth in technology, and it is coming full circle to we want to be smarter and more efficient, and that comes from the data and how we utilize it. And so I think it's a nice little full circle picture that you can see from all of that. So we briefly touched on AI. We've talked a little bit about telematics. We see AI especially becoming more and more common. I think it's one of the first questions people are asking of any provider is, do you have AI? Are you using AI? What changes do you really see likely to happen over the next 3 to 5 years as AI and telematics especially become more common within the commercial vehicle business space? Nicole, I'd love to start with you on this one.
Thanks, Lauren. I think we're going to see a couple of things. If I had to put on my lens of prediction, I think we're going to see an emergence of services result out of the advancement in telematics over the next 3 to 5 years. And for those services, I mean, we have a very diverse workforce right now, and not everybody currently in the workforce has always, processed and understood and worked with these technologies. So I think when I say emergences of services, there might be an opportunity for businesses to interpret and manage that data collected from the technologies. But we're also going to see better analytics in terms of driver safety, improve fuel efficiency and vehicle uptime, and more connected platforms for sharing the information.
Again, connectivity, hearing that word kind of coming back around again in those responses. That was fantastic. Let's see, Candy, what do you have to say on AI and telematics over the next couple of years?
Very similar response to Nicole, but I think that surge, we probably could expect to see a surge in those integrated systems, and that will play huge roles in the predictive part of it for fleet management. It's just different insights to help them adapt to real world conditions. And I would like to see and hope to see, with all the integrations and the brilliant people that we have in our space, that we start seeing a little bit of the fleet ecosystem management, right? With fleets and their suppliers, their customers, their service providers, and all of that connecting together to be better. I do think that we will see services, the subscription-based maintenance, right? I think that will probably become a trend. And it's a trend maybe in some spaces, but very small, probably single digits in others. I think we will see those maybe low adopters to start seeing the benefit to their business in that. And I think that we're going to probably continue to see things just around the technology of reducing the risk of hacks and fraud. And so those are the kinds of advancements that I see.
So, really predictive work and, cybersecurity. I think that's something that's been top of mind for a lot. There is so much more data, technology, websites, information going out in different places, and making sure you're protecting that data and that information is equally important as well.
Yes.
Dania, what about you? What are your thoughts on AI and telematics and changes in the future?
So in one word, growth. So we have been conducting a survey among our Fleet Advisory Hub folks. We just completed our 6th year of our Fleet Technology Index, which asks about adoption and opinions and perceptions of emerging technologies, AI and telematics, data analytics and drones and blockchain, all that kind of cool emerging technology. But we have seen, and I just got the data, so I have it written down here. We have seen a tremendous amount of growth in AI since 2019. So about 18% of our Fleet Advisory Hub companies indicated that they had adopted AI back in 2019. That has swelled to almost half. Just here we are in 2025, so tremendous growth. Now, AI is very broad. So that can be interpreted as, well, I have AI underpinning my telematics, so therefore, by default, I've adopted. You have AI being used in customer support. You have AI being used in marketing materials and CRM, all of that. So it is a very broad category, but it's about growth, certainly for AI. Regarding telematics, same thing. And certainly we're not the only ones talking about growth in the telematics market that is poised for tremendous growth. Back in 2019, again, about 19% of our Fleet Advisory Hub companies said that they have adopted telematics. And now we're up to about 33% of companies. And looking at the penetration of telematics on a per unit or per vehicle in operation basis, about a third of our FAH fleet is equipped with telematics, and that varies widely across class or vehicle segment. Certainly heavy duty and vans have a higher penetration of telematics than do, say, medium duty. But it is, again, the technology is becoming more affordable, it's more reliable, it's more robust. We're just going to continue to see it grow. And I completely agree with Nicole and Candy around connected services. We are seeing that when services, we just did a survey around driver-centric features. So features that the vehicle and connectivity can provide to improve the efficiency of kind of driver-related tasks. And we saw when those services, such as predictive maintenance and cargo management and convenience items like digital key and digital wallet, those type of kind of driver-centric tasks that kind of falls onto the driver, for better or for worse sometimes. When those type of capabilities or functionalities are integrated with a telematics solution, satisfaction with the telematics solution goes up. So not only do I see more connected services, I see more integration. Catherine talked about it this morning that, fleets, they don't want to work with, 10 different suppliers. They want under one roof. They want, a couple of partners. They just don't want to manage all of that. So again, given the improvements in the infrastructure, we're going to see more services, more integration, and we're going to see growth.
And it goes so much back to that efficiency, as you were noting. They're looking for more efficient operations and ways to continue to move forward. And with this data, we need to make sure that we're doing something. And I think, we've noted that data is key to so much of what we've been talking about, and growth and innovation and efficiency. But here's the big question, I think, is how can fleets and businesses make better decisions using the data, not just collecting it? So, Dania, I'd like to go back to you for this one and see what your thoughts are. What can these businesses be doing to actually make some better decisions with this data?
So my answer may be a little bit surprising to you. So we have talked to our Fleet Advisory Hub members about this, and we are seeing that fleets are using their data. About 75% of the fleets in the hub are saying they have no issues utilizing their connected data. And this increases to almost 9 out of 10 among those that have adopted telematics. So first of all, it's an investment. So you don't want it sitting there being underutilized or not being utilized. So, typically, generally, overall, fleets are using the data. Now, having said that, is there an opportunity to cascade the use of the data outside of fleet operations, right? I mean, the primary user of this data is fleet ops. Is there an opportunity to cascade this, the insight from the data, operationalizing that data outside of fleet ops? Absolutely. Think about service and maintenance and routing and dispatch, even HR. If all of this can be better integrated, it can help each kind of department unit to be able to optimize and to maximize the value of the data. We also have heard over surveys and through, focus groups and such that, and Candy touched upon this earlier, it's a lot of data, and sometimes they don't have the right skill set. It's a challenge to utilize the data. So that is a problem. It's not a huge widespread problem, but it is a little bit of a thorn in some fleet managers' side. And also we're seeing that providers can probably do a better job with training. So you go out and you sell your telematics solution, or you sell your connected services, and then perhaps the training is there's opportunity for improvement on the training and getting everybody on board. We hear that it was tough to get everybody on board, and it was tough to train everybody. And we don't hear it a lot, but we do hear it on occasion that some providers take kind of a hands-off approach. So again, they get all of the units connected, and they got the dashboards going, and then they kind of take a hands-off approach. And that's probably missed opportunity for the provider, and certainly is not in the best interest of the fleet. So they're using the data. Are there still pockets of improvement that could benefit the fleet and the provider? Absolutely.
Candy, what would you have to add on to that?
Man, that's excellent. A lot of stuff to add on to that, because I think it does all of that. Yes, very well said. So for me, it is a lot of data, right? So I do think you might have to do things a little different, and it is about integrating various stakeholders, right? And exactly what you said, and talking about that, because sometimes it just becomes another chore for people, right? If I'm not interested in that, I don't care. It doesn't affect what I'm doing. I'm already like at capacity, maxed out on my bandwidth. So sometimes it is the education, the outreach of why that matters, right? So workshops and taking feedback. And when you do that, I feel like there's some sense of empowerment that people have over that data, like they're actually contributing to things, and that we will, facilitate better adoption, make people more interested. They could even bring in another, well, hey, if you're monitoring this, well, then you really need to look at this, right? It really comes down to setting goals, maybe, like what is your top business challenges? And, I think we probably see them across the board about increasing costs, labor shortage, right? And meeting the customer demand or the customer's expectation. And I think you just touched on how that data can help all of that. But sometimes it's just decisions made internally on, maybe customizing your dashboard, right? Like what you are monitoring, and cross-functioning that through the team so one can help each other so many times. And I know that probably all of you can say that someone asks you for something and it's really easy for you to give it to them, the answer, and they've been struggling trying to find it, right? But it wasn't on your radar. But it was just a really easy piece to connect to help someone better. And I think that that's where they're going to be able to make smarter decisions and better use of all the resources as a team.
Communication, I think, as we keep going, and that, connectivity goes beyond just data and information, but within the teams, within your businesses, and the people who are generating and need to use the data as well, really connecting and communicating with each other. Nicole, what thoughts might you have to add on to this one? How can these better decisions be made using data?
I don't know if there's anything left. Fleets can make better decisions by using the data to turn the information into actionable insights by looking at past performances, and they can spot trends or find areas that need improvement, identifying those and trying to find goals to like, hey, we're here, we need to, get it a little bit better here. Optimize routes, improve on fuel efficiency, anticipate maintenance needs and address the issues before they occur, leading to smarter operational choices. But something that Dania said, cascading the data is what I wanted to touch on too. All of this data is being collected, and you're looking at driver trends, driver behaviors, driver environment, and I wonder if there's, going to be opportunity to share that data with OEMs on the product performance, to go back to the manufacturer. Hey, my driver does this. This is their behaviors. This is their braking. Like, this is how, look at just tire analytics, for example. This is the environment we're driving in. This is the temperature. This is how many, miles we're getting out of the tire, and this driver has really good behaviors, but the tire may or may not be performing, or may be performing better than what you thought of, and those are kind of, good feedback that could be cascaded upline.
The communication goes both ways 100%. And I think that this is a chance for businesses and fleets as well to help make bigger change happen beyond just their small business. That's fantastic, being able to share that different information. So earlier today, we heard Catherine talk about uncertainty in her opening. What strategies are helping businesses stay resilient through all of this uncertainty that we've been talking about? Candy, let's start with you on this one. What are you seeing, and what strategies do you think would help?
Well, coming out of Work Truck Week, one thing that was just exciting for me was to hear most people say that things might not change. They may, we're not sure, but we're ready and willing to find new partnerships and do business differently to meet our customers' needs. So one, super exciting to hear that. And I just think that resilience has several pillars that that it stands on. But robust operational strategies, right? And contingency modeling, like we do a lot of fleet modeling, or you hear that, right? Let's do a fleet assessment. Let's do some fleet modeling. I think that doing that with your business, right? I'm in North Carolina, so this is a little bit outside of the fleet, but still you see fleets involved in this, right? So when disaster strikes, right, there's the contingency plans of having community support or knowing where resources are to get them in at a right time. And I think that with uncertainty sometimes in business in general, but specifically in the commercial automotive or automotive, that it is those building those relationships, networking, so that you can support during those, those contingency modeling. And in my experience, I've witnessed it a ton with dealerships coming and supporting the other one, for various reasons, right? So it's always like a little heartwarming to see those things happen, because at the end of the day, at one part of the journey, you might be competitors, right? But really at the end, you're on the same team, and you both know that it takes both of you guys to be successful. And then just be agile, right? Like, I think you have to foster an environment to be for flexibility and quick decision making, right? And it goes back to what you said, the strong communication, the teamwork. And I think that would just better position fleets. It would better position all of us to tackle challenges. And I think that it is a time, for to rise to the occasion, right? Is during these challenges. And one way is the no-brainer, but I'd have to say it is just maintain, financial reserves, risk management. And I think that for me, those are what comes to the top of mind for resilient operational strategy.
Nicole, what would you have to add on to that?
There's a couple of things that come to mind. I think more on the broad spectrum, I think what businesses are doing broad stroke right now is getting back to basics. I think that a lot of them are right sizing, maybe running a more lean organization. A lot of people are wearing multiple hats. I think that, they're just trying to get back to basics. And that was one of the biggest takeaways I saw from Work Truck Week after being attendee for multiple years. And I kind of saw a shift this year. It was a little bit different than the couple of years before. And it was just like, it was getting back to the basics. And I think that that's what a lot of businesses are doing right now, just to stay resilient. And it is very challenging right now. And there is a lot of uncertainty out there. I think businesses are also utilizing a lot of creative financing strategies during these times. One example would be leasing vehicles instead of purchasing them outright. And leasing allows a lot more flexibility and cash flow management. Another would be predictive analytics, which can help predict and anticipate maintenance needs and address them before they occur. So, that'll reduce the problem if you can fix it before it becomes a bigger issue. Just being aware of what's going on and being able to react to it.
Matt, going back down to that productivity that we were talking about earlier and some of the benefits of the technology and the data that we have to be able to utilize. Dania, what would you have to add? How are you seeing businesses stay resilient? What strategies can they really use to do so?
Well, to kind of piggyback on what Candy said about contingency planning and what Nicole said about getting back to the basics, I think don't stop preparing, right? Even though, around EV and regulations with the Trump administration kind of, revisiting all of those proposed regulations, don't stop preparing for the future. So that's one thing. The second thing is we hear this over and over again from the hub members that let them do some pilot testing or some trial periods. Let them apply the technology to their business and let them try it out. That allows them some flexibility. It allows them to reduce the financial risk. So this is, in times of uncertainty, this is the ideal time for true partnerships, right? So take advantage of, in times of unpredictability and economic chaos a little bit, let's be a partner with each other. It's a huge ecosystem, and let's, kind of lend a helping hand to everybody. So that was a couple things. But one thing that we learned, we conducted a telematics shopping journey survey last year. And the number one trigger for a telematics purchase is recommendations from peers and colleagues and your TSPs, right? So during times of uncertainty and when times are a little bit chaotic, talk to each other, right? Learn from one another. Find out how your peers and your colleagues, what do they know about, telematics providers, different telematics solutions, or, insert your technology. Rely on each other, share information, lean on your partners. Even though things are uncertain and we can't control everything, we can control how much effort we put into education and talking with each other, and how much effort we put into kind of continue to prepare for the future. Like Candy said, this contingency planning, because things are moving so quickly. Things just seems to have changed so much. I talked about that data from 2019 to 2025. I mean, who would have thought AI would go from upper teens of adoption to 50% adoption in a handful of years? So don't stop preparing.
I kept thinking you were going to go into don't stop believing. And I feel like that honestly kind of works as well for what we need to think about for our future and what we've got coming. So, as we were talking and planning the session, we realized we could not talk about the future without including the changing workforce. It has been briefly touched on a few times. Nicole mentioned that, going back to the basics was a big theme of Work Truck Week. And If you haven't noticed, the workforce powering our industry has definitely been changing. I was looking up some information, and Gen Z now makes up about a quarter of decision-making roles. Gen X is dipping down to the low 30s. Millennials are expected to account for the largest percentage of the global workforce, and baby boomers are down to single-digit percentages. At the same time, we're dealing with ongoing driver shortages and growing demands for digital skills. How are these generational shifts and workforce changes impacting commercial vehicle businesses specifically? Dania, I'd love to start with you on this one.
So, Lauren, I learned about this redistribution of the cohorts a couple of years ago when we conducted a survey among our Fleet Advisory Hub folks around some advanced technology, some new business models, specifically smart charging and battery swap programs. And just as you said, I had no idea that within the general workforce, right, not just the commercial vehicle space, that the baby boomer percentage of the workforce has been reduced by 50% from the mid 90s to I think it was 2017. This is data from Pew Research. As you said, millennials are now the largest cohort within the workforce. So there's definitely a shift here. And what we saw, and it is not entirely surprising or unexpected, but that younger workforce, that younger cohort, they're more familiar with advanced technologies like the smart charging and the battery swap programs. They're more aware. They're more willing. More of them are interested in participating in such programs versus the older cohorts. So that's not entirely surprising. And now, having said that, your more experienced or older workers specific to these technologies, these folks, it's not as if they fail to recognize the value of these programs, but typically their awareness, familiarity, they're a little bit more cautious and maybe skeptical of the promised benefits of it. So they're taking a more cautious approach. But it's just a reminder that this is probably a really good thing, because if you only had an older workforce, then they may never adopt a new business model. And if you only had a younger cohort with less experience, they may be overeager and maybe not fully vet a solution. So we're actually in a really nice transitional period where we still have a fairly high proportion of the more experienced, and we've got a growing proportion of the less experienced working together for the betterment of the company. So it's going to be interesting to see as we continue to move forward. And I've mentioned in other of our summits, embrace reverse mentoring. I do it all the time. Ask a younger folks, how do I do this? What is this? What are they talking about? I've never heard this. I've never heard this term before. I've never heard this technology before. Embrace reverse mentoring.
I love that phrase. I remember us talking about that a while back, and it is still, I think, really understanding and leaning on the strengths of all generations, whether they are older or younger than you. We all have the different strengths and capabilities, and I think it's such an important thing to understand and to see. Let's see, Nicole, let's go to you on this one.
Sorry, I just got done sneezing. The Georgia pollen is getting me. There's currently 5 generations in the workforce. And with that, there's such a varying difference in communication styles and learning preferences and tech skills. So I think the emerging workforce, they have an increasing interest in a work-life balance and flexibility, and that's that's requiring companies to rethink their scheduling and operations. And there's also a higher emphasis on sustainability and green companies. So, you know, I think that this is causing businesses to shift how they recruit and retain and even train the younger people, or the newer people entering the workforce today. And that's, you know, something that hasn't, you know, historically been done, but it's what is being sought after now.
No, 100%. Candy, what would you have to add?
Well, this is a big subject. There's a lot to unpack here, right? So, first of all, I would just say thank goodness for all generations, right? Because each one has carried its own torch, and that I don't think we just can't ever forget that, right? Because sometimes we always think the generation coming behind us have got it all wrong, right? And that we did it better, but that's not true. We just face different things, and the upcoming generation. Just a lot of global factors, right, shaped things that they have to face, and the competition's very different than it was for some other generations. So I just think it's one understanding, right? Like it's an openness thing. It's understanding the reverse mentorship, the mentorship opportunities inside of companies, because you know, I have a preteen son, and it's just crazy sometimes the things that I forget, like he does not know what keys. We don't use keys, right? And so my mom was like, called me, and I got the shame call about, oh, your son did not, you know, how to use a key in the door. And I was like, yeah, well, because we don't use them. And I think it's a lot of things like that through the generation. So I think that, you know, it's that communication and leaning on each other, right? And learning things, because the future is in the young generation, right? Like they will carry it forward. And, you know, we need to be able to equip them the best that we know how. And then they can make less mistakes than we made. And then they pass that to their next generation. And just fostering technology in general, I think, is going to be key to that, whether you are a huge advocate or not. But for the generation that's upcoming, we should respect that from them, that they're going to have a different expectation, right? They're going to expect those seamless transitions through things, or data available to them, right? They're probably not going to pull out a Post-it note and take notes or in a notebook. It's going to be done in different forms. They didn't sit in college with, you know, a desktop computer, probably. I mean, it just, it's fun, right? But I think sometimes it's the little disconnects that we might forget as we're in transition, because we fully have jumped the hurdle. After Work Truck Week, I've seen it. We're in for exciting times, which I think you also get the energy, Lauren, from the younger generation. Be willing to collaborate. You know, they're not all about being stuck in a peg or a box, and it's flexibility and more to them than just a job title or salary. Things need to be more meaningful for them.
Saying something about my Post-it notes that I've been taking notes on during the meeting.
I've been taking notes too, Lauren.
But I think, you know, you brought up a really great point on so many of those. And again, you know, language, I think, is a big part of it. You know, we went through the generations, but Gen Alpha is the upcoming generation. And I have a 10-year-old daughter myself, and I half the language, even she doesn't understand half of the slang and terminology, because it's changing so fast and coming at them from so many different places, and technology from videos and from social media becoming such a part of what they're doing.
Just to add on to that, Lauren, what I have noticed, and I have read different pieces, and I'm thinking it might all be connected, and we probably should think about it in our space too, is that Alpha, especially generation, is we're going to have to say what we need to say in less than 30 seconds. Because that's how they've already been programmed, right? Like, I mean, everything. Like, that's why they don't, you know, why would I watch the Laker game? I'm just going to watch the highlights, you know, and different things. It's just, we will have to be very efficient and make sure that we are able to communicate quickly, right? Concise. I do think that will continue, that we will have to strive to meet their needs for sure.
Well, as we're 50 minutes into our session, I think we have a little work to do on being more concise, but we have a lot to talk about. So I think we're still fine. But, we do have just a little bit of time left. I want to ask us all kind of at least one more question that I think is really, really important here. But what are going to be the skill sets essential for the next generation of fleet and commercial business professionals? We've talked data, we've talked AI, we've kind of talked about multiple parts of our industry, but in a nutshell, what are going to be the essential skill sets for the next generation of fleet and commercial business professionals? Candy, I want to start with you on this one.
Sure. I think it will be, we'll need to cultivate a blend, right, of technical, analytical, and the communication strategy. And maybe some key things to that would be data analytics, right? The visualizations. When we were talking earlier about creating dashboards, right? Like, I think just those two key points would, one, help you read a dashboard and know how to adjust to meet your business goal. But I think that knowing the deltas, right? Like just understanding the data better. And then also, I think that supporting the new technologies, always the upcoming, just with EV and self-driving, right? Just those two things alone, understanding what we've seen with the EV and what that takes with technology from transitioning to managing. But as always, interpersonal skills, project management, adaptive thinking, relationship management probably were the ones that I had on my list. And I think if we can start incorporating those now, right, and just keep them at the front of mind, then we will put ourselves in the best seat possible.
Really embracing stronger human relation skills and understanding that communication and different communication styles as these generations come together in one place, I think is so important. Let's see, Nicole, what do you think? What skill sets do you think are going to be really essential?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yes, data analytics and software and technology are absolutely crucial for the next generation of fleet professionals. But in all of that, it's absolutely critical that we still teach and, cascade our knowledge down to how to communicate, how to adapt to a diverse audience, how to not lose these timeless skills. For the interpersonal relationships, how to say thank you, how to build those relationships in person, because, not everything is a quick, let me fire off an email and stuff like that, like how to be appreciative and how to show gratitude that's not done through sending a text message or done electronically, like how to actually be appreciative and be thankful, or thank you for showing me how to do that. Those little things do go a long way, but I think that can get lost in the digitized format or world.
Dania, what would you have to add?
Well, I totally agree with what Nicole and Candy have said. And Lauren, you had mentioned it. This is now a data-driven industry. So you need to be able to embrace data decision-making. You don't need to be a data scientist or an AI developer, but you do need to be comfortable with data and understand how to leverage data to make more confident decisions. And as both Nicole and Candy has talked about, the soft skills are still important, right? And, our industry is a large ecosystem, which is getting bigger with electric vehicles, right? So you have to have a spirit of collaboration and be a good team member. And certainly our industry is not free from challenges. So you also need to be having a mindset of continuous improvement and flexibility and being able to pivot. And not siloed thinking. That kind of goes back to the ecosystem, right? So I'm not sure if the younger generation is more comfortable with just thinking through terms of kind of one thing at a time or within a silo. Our industry is not like that. It's all interconnected. It's all interrelated. So there's a lot of skill sets that are going to be needed to be successful. But it's also a very challenging and exciting, and the change is going to be quick and deliberate, and AI is going to make it very, very exciting. And I think it actually can attract a younger generation. And so it's going to be exciting to see how the new generation kind of takes us into the next couple of decades.
Thank you guys so much for your insights today. I think what's really standing out to me is how much intentional effort is going into shaping where we're headed, whether it's smarter use of data, stronger teams, improved communications. The industry is evolving really fast, but it's also collaborating more. We're getting back to those basics and we're really building solutions. I hope that everybody who joined us today really takes away the fact that, connectivity and growth are happening and so important and valuable. And again, my favorite quote, I think, which, came from Dania, that innovation comes from the data. It is absolutely true. And remember, there's an app for that. I think those are some of our key concepts. We've got a changing generational shift. But we're ready for it. We're here for it. And we're clearly excited about it. I think the passion and the energy that you all had when talking about the future, even if it was a challenge or uncertainty, was so clear, and it came through very much to me, and I hope to everybody else. So for everybody out there, don't miss your chance to connect with fellow attendees right after this during the commercial connection session. Just click on your networking icon on the left side of your screen. It starts at 11:55 a.m. Pacific time or 2:55 p.m. Eastern. And again, thank you all so much for joining us.